Hello, and welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast. I am your host, Katie Colliker, and welcome to episode 3. Today's episode is going to feature my interview I did with Tanner Sands. He grew up in Utah and went on to play college soccer. In the interview, you'll be able to hear his story and experiences. Love doing this interview with Tanner. I may call him T in the interview because that was his nickname. So just be prepared for that when you're listening. Before I get into the interview and share that with you guys, I just want to remind you guys to give me a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. That way this show becomes more available to those looking for content like this. I'm hoping to be able to grow the listenership in 2023. And I'm super excited to get this podcast really rolling. I have several interviews lined up, and I'm really excited to share those with you guys. So we've got some fun stuff coming up. I'm hoping to be able to do a drawing for you guys. So make sure you find me on Instagram at Kick It with Katie podcast _ between all the names. The link will be in the show notes and show description. So make sure you look for that. And if you're ever interested in being a guest on the podcast or have any questions for our guests, please shoot me an email at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. And also that will be in the show notes and show description. Thank you guys for listening today. And here is my interview with Tanner Sands. Enjoy. All right. Ready to officially get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, Tanner, you were born in Minnesota?
Fargo, actually, but only spent a month.
You were born in Fargo?
What I've been told, like a month, and then moved to Minnesota.
Okay, so you're born in Fargo, and then you went to Minnesota. How old were you when you moved from Minnesota to Utah?
I think I was 7. I believe so. I think I was 7 or 8. First grade, whatever that would be. I remember I came
around
halfway,
first grade.
Yeah, I believe I came halfway through the year. In first grade is when my dad's job took us to Utah. So I might have the years off, but first grade is what I remember.
So when you were in Minnesota, did you start playing soccer there, or did you guys do hockey?
Yeah, exactly. You remember right. So soccer is actually kind of big here, but in a funny way, it's to stay in shape during non-hockey season. So a lot of hockey players are told to play soccer in the off season because it's like a lot of hockey is actually more than you think, like foot speed and things like that. So then obviously just staying in shape. So my brother and I both played hockey, was like our main primary sport, but played soccer for fun in the off season, and that continued actually. And we moved to Utah. Utah doesn't have the same hockey background as Minnesota, where like pretty much every NHLer coming from the U.S. is from Minnesota. Feels like these days. Where so my brother and I were playing 2-3 years up, and just didn't have any friends because everyone was much older than us. So soccer kind of started to push its way up in like the significance of how we looked at sports.
When you moved to Utah, did you try and find a hockey team, or did you guys?
Yeah,
how did you guys fall into soccer in Utah?
Yeah, so we played. I think it was called the Utah Grizzlies, if I remember right, which was like the best travel hockey club at that time in Utah. I went to school with a kid. He was on this travel hockey team, and he recommended it, and I went there. But being that I grew up playing in Minnesota, like every day of my life, we had a pond in our backyard. I skated for like before I could walk, is what my parents joke around saying. Utah's doesn't have the same hockey background, and like I was mentioning, it was like I think I was playing 2 or 3 years older than what I was, and obviously hockey's a physical sport, and I just remember coming home and just being so beaten up, and said I didn't have any friends, and I think at that time, I don't know if you remember, but Brendan Kempen is someone I became really close with in school. He was switching over to Sparta at the time. We played like a grassroots soccer, like rec soccer together, and his parents recommended I go with them. So I think we actually both tried out for Sparta the same day. Started going to Vegas and tournaments, and to be honest, I had some like Will Begrew that I believe was just on here. Brendan and others. They became my best friends, both in outside of soccer and within soccer, and just started to love soccer more than hockey at that point.
So, side note, really quick, when I was a rec player, so like for junior Jazz basketball in Utah, you would get like nosebleed tickets to a Jazz game.
Yeah.
And I played Sandy City Rec soccer, but we didn't have Real Salt Lake then. So they gave us Grizzly tickets and we would go watch a hockey game during the season because I guess it was supposed to be similar. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I always thought that was so bizarre. But those were some of the only hockey games I ever saw were the Grizzly games that we got to go to because of rec soccer. But they tried to say, I can't remember what it was because it was a million years ago for me, but the coach or whoever was trying to say, hockey and soccer are very similar
Yeah.
in, I don't know, some ways. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I see a whole
Actually,
lot of differences
I
to
actually have
me,
a
but
funny anecdote about that too. When I was in high school, I had like a group of high school friends. Brendan, I already mentioned, he was like the number one tennis player in the country growing up. Went to Notre
mm-hmm.
Dame. I had another one who's like a football star, and we put together a junior Jazz basketball team of like just really good athletes. And it turned out like we had more kids from our high school coming to our junior Jazz games than went to like our high school basketball team, including our high school basketball team. We're like some of our best friends, and we won it like 2 straight years, and we acted like we were winning like the national championship, and we had like sweatbands, headbands, the whole ordeal. But it was always fun.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we remember when your team played your soccer team. I remember, I can't remember whose house we were at, but you guys were telling us how a bunch of you got together and played like a football team and you guys like throttled them and you were like, I can't remember how old you were, but you weren't very old, but it was like this supposed to be like the big comp football team or I don't know, and you guys
I
played against
vaguely
them
I vaguely
and you
remember
guys
that.
killed them.
I remember we had Brendan, who was just a star athlete. We had Will, obviously,
Yeah.
who was like a top draft pick, who we mentioned on your podcast. We had Curtis Briner way back when,
Uh-huh.
and he was like a stud at football. And I remember these kids were like talking big game. I don't know where we were. We're like, okay, let's play, and we just play tackle football and just beat the crap out of them. It was we had a
Yeah.
we had a pretty athletic team, not just good at soccer, but that group we had of like
Yeah.
Evan, Marshall Miller. It was just such an athletic group. I think that it would always
Yeah.
we had a good group.
Justice's cousin is Chad Lewis, who played in the NFL, and I don't know his whole story, but Justice has told me, he played soccer until he was in high school and then he went and played football. So a lot of his soccer skills that he learned translated into the sport that he ended up playing
Yeah,
professionally. So you played for Sparta until you graduated, right?
yeah. I think moved like second or third grade. Brendan and I joined, and then until senior year, the, I think the best thing about the team we had is some kids would come and go, but for the most part, we had that same core group from the very start to the very end, and I think speaks a lot to Justice and what he did in terms of just the culture. And we were just discussing obviously before this, but a lot of the priority these days seems to be on like individual kids development, but not the team development. And I think he did a really good job of
Mm-hmm.
making us all feel important and part of the team, but also developing individually at the same time. And we had that group that I think 7 or 8 state cup championships, traveled all
Mm-hmm.
over, won big tournaments, and I think we're one of the first clubs from Utah to be able to do that. And I think a large part was that we had that same team from start to finish, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was a fun team for us to be able to watch grow up and accomplish so many amazing things. And like I had mentioned in Will's episode, it was at a time where there weren't all the other leagues. There weren't the ECNL, GA, E64. It was literally like you had the one league and all the best teams played the best teams when you
Yeah,
would go to tournaments and you would go even just to regionals. I mean, to go to regionals, you were literally playing the best teams in the nations. Whereas now, not even the best teams go to regionals. They're in MLS Next, or,
Yeah.
they play ECNL, and it's definitely a lot different because there's so many different options for, teams to play in. And I don't want to take anything away from teams that go to these other leagues and, do great things. But, back then it was legit the best of the best. And that was
I remember
definitely an accomplishment.
one thing I remember is, especially when we were earlier, like obviously LaRocca and us, then LaRocca developed a pretty good team in our age group as well. But for a while there, it felt like our quote unquote rivals were like Legends or East Coast, these California teams that we played in the final of like every Nomads and Surf Cup and Vegas showcases. And I remember there's a team in Arizona that we play a lot, but it felt like it was fun because we'd see them at every tournament, and it was like the best kids from California, the best kids from Utah, and it really felt that way. To what you were saying is, we hated East Coast, and every game we played, I just remember it felt like such a rivalry. But it's funny because they're a team from Southern California, but we play them at the end of each tournament, and it was always very competitive.
Yeah, Sparta versus West Coast.
Yeah.
And it's sad because, like, as he got these other teams with Sparta, as teams are progressing, getting older, and he's coaching other age groups within Sparta, and we'd go to these tournaments, I would ask him, are we going to be playing like a West Coast or Legends, or, and he's like, well, there's kind of not really that club anymore because now they're here. And, and he's kind of kept track of where everybody has ended up, whether they've gone MLS Next or when there was the DA, if they were part of the DA, and what clubs have merged with other clubs. Blackhawks are no longer a thing. And so it's all interesting to see where certain clubs that were so well established, because of all of these new leagues and things, where clubs are having to combine together or merge, and different things are happening with other clubs. So it's also pretty cool that Sparta has been able to stay Sparta for so long. There's still a few Utah clubs that have just stayed core in Utah. What was one of your favorite tournaments to go to?
I mean, it always felt when I was really young, something about Surf Cup and walking in there for the first time and the event around it always felt special. I don't know what it was. Maybe just the polo ground, and all the food trucks and stands and Adidas. And I remember we got pulled back to Adidas tent, and they gave us a bunch of free stuff, and the whole best of the best that they had everywhere. It truly felt, especially back then when, like you said, and going back to this, when all the best clubs played there, it felt like you were invited, and you had to be invited at the time, and it felt like significant. And then obviously as we got older, Dallas Cup was special, and obviously playing all the international teams there. And I remember we thought we were just so good, and then we played, I think it was like Pumas, and they just beat the crap out of us. It was like 4-1, and apparently some of us went on to like do big things, and it was a wake-up call for us, and in a good way, where it was like, we thought we were this. I think we were ranked like third in the country at the time, these hot shots, and then you play teams from around the world. And yeah, it was, I think those, Vegas was always a fun trip because everyone would go, and we'd always be at like one of those same hotels. And but Surf Cup, I remember just always being like, this is awesome. And then I guess the last thing I should say is I think we got really lucky and played regionals in Hawaii like 2-3 times, my team. And just being in Hawaii was always
that was I got to go the first time that you guys went, and that was amazing. And then the second time you guys went, I was pregnant. I just had a baby, and so I couldn't go. I was pretty disappointed, but yeah, that was so exciting for you guys to be able to do that. And we were actually, I think, if COVID hadn't happened, regionals, I believe, was supposed to be in Hawaii this year, and we would have been there with a couple of teams, but it's been in Idaho, I don't know how many years in a row. So we've been going to.
And thinking about like spending like you said, I was like third grade to senior in high school playing on the same group and spending every Thanksgiving with, everyone. Like 2 months out of our summer traveling to different tournaments. It like really formed these friendships that I still hold on to today. And a lot of the memories aren't just like on field, but a lot of them are off field, and the times we had in California or Vegas, or up to shenanigans at the hotels and stuff like that like just you hold on to as you go and get older.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you guys all became like brothers. We always see our players, especially like you guys, because he coached you guys probably the longest. We see you guys as like our own kids, basically,
Yeah,
because we watched you all grow up and then you all graduated. And now, everybody's
yeah,
been in college. Some people are getting married, have kids, going on to these great things. So it's
crazy.
definitely been fun to be able to see where you guys have gone and the things that you guys
Yeah,
have done.
but also you guys too. Like I remember Justice when he first took us, he was still I think in med school or trying to get through med school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were obviously I remember you guys got married. Like I can't remember what year, but like seeing your family grow as we grew up too. And obviously Justice has had so many successful teams, and I know he had 1 or 2 teams before us too, but it was like felt pretty cool that we were kind of like the first team he took from. He had Will Begrew, I remember, and Devin Lynch, in like a rec team, and then brought him to Sparta, and
Mm-hmm.
then Sparta all the way up. Like he knew them since he was they were like 4, and it felt like we like
Yeah.
all grew together. And being part of like your guys' family, which it did feel like was special as well.
Yeah, we have a picture in our wedding album of, I don't know who's in it, but there's several of you soccer kids. They're all in like a circle because you all did like a cheer or something for our
Yeah,
video too. And so there's a picture of a bunch of you soccer kids. And like I said, I don't know who was there, but there were a bunch of you in a picture for our wedding. So that was
yeah,
fun
and
to be able to see you guys when you were just little.
not to go like anecdotal and stuff about that, but like I still remember like we would joke all the time when we were young. Justice's favorite line was, "You guys are giving me a freaking migraine," and he'd always yell that, and always had his Hurley hat. And at tournaments, we'd always like try to take his Hurley hat off, and he'd just get so mad at us. And
Yeah.
it's funny thinking about all those moments and like growing up
Yeah,
together.
I remember, I think it was Brendan Kempen in the hotel, in one of the hotels. I can't remember if we were in Vegas or California, but he had taken the hat off of Justice and was running down the hall. And I went and caught him and grabbed it back. And you guys were all like, what? Like, I don't remember who was there, but it was just funny because, like, I don't think anybody expected me to like get involved or
Yeah,
anything, but I went and got it back because I was like, I know how much he loves his Hurley hats, so just leave
I
it alone.
I actually remember he got legitimately mad at me one time because it wasn't at a practice. I ran into him. What is the where you pick up a phone and you order it and it like rings
Training
in?
table.
I was there and he didn't know I was there, and I was with like friends, and I came up and grabbed his hat, and he looked at me, and I think he was in shock that like I was there. And I remember the next practice he was like, "Do you ever take my hat off me in public?" Like, it was always funny.
Yeah, he doesn't like it when if he's had a hat on and then his hair's all messy. He
Oh,
gets
messy, yeah.
really, yeah, because he'll it's really funny because there's been a few times where we've seen people and we're out for like a date night or just out and he doesn't have a hat on, and players like do double takes because it's like they don't recognize him without a hat on because he
Yeah,
always wears some sort of a usually a black or gray hat, and so people are always like, wait, is that him? Like, it's like when
yeah,
you see a teacher outside of school or
yeah.
and you're like, what's going on here?
These people don't exist outside
um
of soccer.
right.
Yeah.
Right, you played for Sparta. How was it playing for Juan Diego, your
Hmm.
high school? So how would you compare high school soccer to your comp soccer team? Your
Sure. I, I don't think it's. I don't think I'm like. I developed a really good relationship with my high school coach too, who I still chat with here and there. Not as much anymore, but did for a while. But he was a history teacher that played like rec soccer, and I think that's some people's
mm-hmm,
story when they play high school soccer is they are around. It's just different, right? And but I remember
mm-hmm,
my freshman year. Speaking of Sparta, there was this kid named Skylar Duran who was a senior at the time. He was this big shot in Sparta, and I was like, no way! Like, there's another kid from Sparta on this, and Skylar kind of took me under his wing, and he was one of the best players I've ever seen. But then I think that the special thing that I remember about high school is my brother went off to RSL Academy, but my senior year he came back to play. And as you know, there was quite a few kids. Justice happened to coach my brother too for a while there, but we, Julian, and there was a whole group of Sparta kids in that group that were just so good. Where before it was like, each year we had like one or two quality players, and then dropped off pretty significantly. But it was fun playing with high school friends, and we, Juan Diego, for all the good and bad of it, there is a community around it, and we had a lot of people that supported us and came to every game. So I think it was a good reprieve from club soccer in some degree. I think just being able to share that with high school friends and just have fun with it. And it was kind of a grind because you practice every day in high school, but I always just tried to have fun and kind of see that as a few months where I just have fun and play with friends and play in front of friends. Where Sparta obviously is competitive, and every kid on our team was, college level player, where we pushed ourselves, where high school was more just like, let's just and try to enjoy it. And not that you didn't with Sparta, but it's just a different game.
Right. After high school, you went to Vassar.
Yeah.
But it looks like you had offers from other schools to play as well.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
how
about
did you
offer. There's definitely there's one. I think Seattle, St. Mary's, Colorado Mesa. I think Greg was just taking over UVU and said, walk on. And there's a few schools like that. Sorry, I totally interrupted your question, but I think where you're going.
Oh,
with
no. I was just gonna say, how did you decide on Vassar? Like, was it just because I don't know if you got a full ride or?
Yeah, so it's a D3 school, so it wasn't full rides, but they did a lot for me academically. But funny enough, they're the first school that ever reached out to me. I think I was like a sophomore at the time, and I don't know, maybe it was just my ego at the time, but I was like, D3, I'm not even gonna respond or reply. It was like I want to go D1 and play soccer at a high level. But Andy was who became my college coach, was pretty persistent, and came to multiple tournaments that we were at. And so I think almost out of gratitude, I took a first person to reach out. I took a visit, and I walk in, and I was just at Seattle like 2 weeks prior, which was a D1 school, and they're like, there's social, there's academic, there's soccer. You get to pick two. It's your life is soccer once you're here, and then if you want to focus on academics or you want to focus on social, that's fine, but your life is soccer. Where I went to Vassar, and Vassar at the time was like a top 10 school academically, up there with like Yale, Harvard, the Ivy Leagues. It's Yale's sister school, and it was a very good academic school. And I was kind of coming to the realization that maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was, but academically I was always a pretty strong student, and I went there and just loved the team, the coach, and I don't know, the campus was beautiful, and I think I was ready for a change. New York was that change, and the campus is just, unbelievable, and there's just a good academic opportunity there that after talking to my parents, I just felt like I couldn't pass up.
Yeah, and there's obviously nothing wrong with choosing that. I mean, when I chose to not play soccer anymore and I decided, I was like, I don't even think I'm going to go for a college scholarship. It's definitely a big decision to make, because you're like, this is possibly going to create my future, and so it's really difficult for players who love the game and they're like, I really want to keep it a part of my life, but I also have to think past that and where I'm going to go with that. So it's definitely a difficult decision for any player to make when they're trying to make these decisions. And I know, at least personally, deciding, that I wasn't going to play anymore, that it was definitely going to impact me, because I think, there's always that possibility, like maybe I could get a college scholarship and it'll help. But I know that, like you said, some of the scholarships, it's like you're going to be doing soccer so much that you're going to miss out on so much, or your academics are going to be delayed because you're doing so much here.
Sure. I think, and like I said, I think early on I had this image of what D3 soccer was, and like I was like, I want to be D1, and then I go and I got to start all 4 years. I was on a team that also had a lot of kids who had D1 interest and could have gone D1, but they, I guess the point is there's a lot of disparity in college soccer, and we play Marist, which was a school pretty close to us, and they're like middle tier D1 school. They make the tournament here and there, but like kind of middle of their group. And my time at Vassar, we were 4-1-1 against them. And one year we beat them 5-0, I think it was, and just dominated them. And it wasn't just like on the score; it was like 80% possession. I think it says that like I think I got lucky with the situation I was presented, but I don't know. I wanted to keep playing soccer, and this gave me a opportunity to do it, meet good people. And although it wasn't D1, it maybe didn't set me up to play soccer beyond college. It got me to a school that, to be honest, I wouldn't have got in academically if it wasn't for soccer. And then once I was there, it was kind of like approved academically and ended up being the best fit for me. So I would say to kids who are, looking, as every coach who reaches out, be thankful for that and don't shoot them down just because they're not D1, but they're D2, D3, NAI, junior, whatever it is. It opens doors that I wouldn't have had open for me if I didn't, take that opportunity.
Yeah, that's good advice. So what are you doing now? Because I know that you're in with the Rough Riders, the Long Island Rough Riders.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was poli-sci history, essentially pre-law, and I was all set to go to law school. But I noticed every single paper I was writing, these 20-page papers, one after another, always had to do with soccer. Like I took a colonialism class, and it was like rediscovering post-colonial Africa through Cote d'Ivoire and Drogba, and like the most ridiculous essays. But it was always back to soccer and sports. So instead of going to law school, I actually went to University of San Francisco for sports management, and then started working for Orange County Soccer Club in their marketing department and player development department. And then pandemic hit. They were nice enough to keep me on, but obviously lacked a little bit of resources at the time, and the pay went down. So I actually got over back to New York, where luckily a lot of my college friends stayed, and now I'm the assistant GM with the Rough Riders, which has been a learning experience. I luckily have an ownership group that looks at beyond your age and what can you do for us, and it's been awesome and a great experience. And I'm still within the game of soccer, and I oversee all our youth sports, and we have 5,000 kids in our programs, and then also get to work on the semi-professional and professional level. So it's pretty cool, and how things are developing. I think we have some pretty cool news coming soon that I'm excited about. So yeah, it all worked itself out.
I can't wait to hear it.
yeah. Can't say there's some NDAs and things like that involved, so can't say at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, just happy to be in the game of soccer ultimately, though, and I still jump on the field and try to put on my best, Justice, what I learned from Justice and all the other great coaches I had, and help out here and there to keep me grounded. But yeah, I feel lucky. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Congratulations on that. I mean, that's a pretty huge accomplishment to be able to do that. Growing up, did you have any major obstacles that you had to overcome? I know people had injuries, or they had to move, or things like that.
I definitely obviously moved a bit as a kid and had a few injuries. I think I broke my hip our sophomore year. Sound like a grandpa, but I was I think it was the first time we ever lost. Actually, this is a funny story about youth soccer. The first time we ever lost in the state of Utah was at the LaRocca tournament to LaRocca. And it's because non-contact injury. I was playing center back because we had another injury where I was usually holding mid or right back. And I turned and I heard a snap and I fell down. And I think it was Alejandro went on to score and they beat us in overtime 2-1. And it's because I broke my hip on a non-contact injury. And that's the first time we ever lost. But I would say, to be very, very honest, I always feel like I was pretty fortunate. And if there's one thing I learned through soccer is privilege is a thing, and I grew up, with a lot of resources to have access to a club like Sparta and a coach like Justice and a teammates that I did who I felt like were some of the best players in the country, and to be around all that, it was, I don't know, I think I had more gratitude and privilege than, obstacles. But really, I think when you do, and things I had, having those people and the privilege around you to have, teammates like Wilbur Grew and Brendan Kempen and Alexis Beza and all these people that obviously you knew and I knew for years to pick you up was always, I just always felt like I was just super lucky to have those teammates and coaches that I did, like Justice.
We touched on it a little bit because your dad helped coach a little bit. He was kind of like an assistant. But how would you would you rate like your parents' support, and how, I mean, not necessarily rate, but how would you describe your parents' involvement, and
Yeah.
what, how would you feel that your parents did for you?
Yeah. It's funny thinking about that, because if you really think about it, my dad was probably one of the overbearing parents at times. He was definitely hot-headed, and when there were fouls and he was mad at the ref, I think there was one time he got like kicked off the sideline and stuff. So it was definitely a work in progress, and I think
Right.
Justice told him at times, "Hey, it's you got to settle it down." But it's because he cared, And I had a mom who I think had obviously a brother to Brandon who played under Justice as well, but didn't miss a game or didn't miss a practice to drop us off at. And so when I go back to privilege, I think about that, and the support I had to my mom and dad did a lot to be able to give Brandon and I the opportunity to play at tournaments like Surf Cup. And obviously none of that stuff is cheap. And
Right.
unfortunately, as Injustice and I were actually talking about this, is unfortunately youth soccer has become pretty expensive and it's a pay to play game. And I feel pretty lucky to have had them who supported my brother and I, and gave us the resources and access to be able to do the things we did growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know both of your parents, and they're great people. They were definitely, very supportive from the sideline, and
Yeah.
I remember one of the, I think it was your team in Surf Cup when Justice got a red card, and it was kind of a, because I don't think he actually had an official assistant at the time, and so it kind of caused a little bit of chaos because I think I want to say your dad had to step in, or somebody had to step
Yeah.
in and coach, and it was like Justice never thought he'd be in that situation because it was a ridiculous red card. But
I think it was me who
um,
I was like on a breakaway and I got taken down from behind and it wasn't even a claim. That whole game, I remember it was like I
yeah,
got hurt, and I actually think I was like weirdly never happened to be on breakaways, but I was, and that happened. Yeah, my dad was. Yeah, he was around a lot. He liked being part of it, and he liked being that parent who brought the kids and had everyone in his hotel room. And obviously, he moved to Arizona, so when we played there, he always loved to host the team, and
yeah,
he loved to have everyone around. Yeah, and be
yeah.
involved as possible.
I think because Justice has been there numerous times to Arizona,
Yeah.
and I think even with some of the other teams that when Justice has been there, since you guys haven't played for quite a while, but occasionally Justice will touch base with him and he'll go and visit him and stuff. But
Yeah, he loves that. He
or
loves going to see some of Justice's teams. So
I
he
was
just,
gonna say, or he'll come out to the games and watch the
yeah,
teams play. So that's fun that he's stayed involved a little bit and still comes and
definitely.
supports the club.
Yeah,
Anything else? Any advice that you want to give any of the youth players today? I know you gave some advice earlier
yeah,
in one of your answers, but any other advice that you would give youth players of today?
yeah. We were kind of talking about this before, but there's so much, and like I'm obviously still part of the game too, and I think we see so much like switching of teams and parents involved like that. But I was just gonna say that I think the thing that I look back and what truly changed my life is the fact I grew up between Minnesota and Utah. I went to like private Catholic schools, and this is all to say that I don't think I ever would have met like Will Bagru or Alexis Beza and people that I deem as like some of my best friends, and I hope to always be best friends. I still talk to Will, once every other week, I would say, and Alexis and I stay in touch with, and Keaton, and all these kids that I just don't think I would have ever gotten to know, and if it wasn't for soccer. And not only that, but we were together from third grade all the way through high school, and I think we're so focused today on like, is my kid in a good position to succeed and all that. What's being overlooked is like just the friendships and the enjoyment and the moments like we talked about, like the trips and all that. And I think soccer, and the reason I fell in love with the sport is because I mean we just had the World Cup where a quarter of the globe tuned in to watch it from every part of every country in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it truly brings people together that I think in such and I don't want to get political, but divisive place we're in. I think sports and soccer in particular has a way of connecting people beyond like ideologies and backgrounds. And I just would say to really have fun, enjoy it, make friendships and relationships, because ultimately yeah, like you want to succeed and win, but a lot of what I remember from my time playing youth sports is off the field, and the things I still have and hold on to are the relationships I made. So just remembering what's important. I think sometimes we forget that, and trying to get to the ultimate goal, which I'm sure for some parents is their kids going to college soccer, playing professional, or for kids to do that. But you have to be surrounded by good people, and you have to have the right relationships. And so, yeah, sorry, long-winded way of saying, I think just remembering, relationships and the moments are what's important. And you talked a little bit about adversity earlier and how to go through it. Like, obviously, I remember everyone on my team had something come up once or another, whether it was, as you remember, I remember CJ, and obviously it's not our story to tell, but CJ lost his mom, and I lost my best friend in my sophomore year of high school and things like that. And I always remember like having the same group and that like tight knit team that you talked about and the friends. Like soccer felt like the reprieve to make everything go away and be okay. And it's because how much fun and the love we had for each other. And it was a bunch of kids who outside of, I think Elta maybe had two, or I don't know. I think every single one of us came from a different high school background, and none of us would have been friends if it wasn't for maybe, but like unlikely that we would have been friends if it wasn't for this team, and the fact we had each other always seemed to be what was the most important, and the fun we had.
Yeah, you guys were all very spread out and came from such different backgrounds, and it was really cool to be able to see you guys just meld so well together. I mean, it was one of those things where you had some kids that literally came from poverty and other kids whose parents were very well off, and the way that you guys treated each other was not any different. Like it didn't matter what background you guys came from. You guys treated each other like brothers, and you respected each other on and off the field, and that was awesome to be able to see.
Yeah, I agree full-heartedly. And yeah, like you said, like Guy from Brazil, Will from Cote d'Ivoire, Peter from Honduras, Luis from Mexico, it was just crazy how you'd find this group of people. But yeah, we always, like you said, made each other better, but also respected each other and loved each other, I would say.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add?
No, I just thank you for letting me come on. I think this is really cool what you're doing, and I'm excited to see where this goes. Like everything else, I'm sure it'll be successful, and just thanks for letting me be part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's great to see you, and thanks for coming on today. And we'll definitely look forward to your, I'm assuming, news that hopefully will be coming soon that we can share.
Yeah. Same.
Okay. Good to see you, T.
Good chatting. Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed that interview I did with Tanner. I know I did. So thank you, T, for the interview. Loved having you on. And please make sure that you share his episode because it has great advice. Share any of the episodes that you love with your friends and family, other teammates you may have, so that they are able to hear this great advice from these former youth players. Please make sure, again, to give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Want to get the word out about this podcast, and that is the best way of doing it other than sharing it on your socials. So go and follow me at Kick It With Katie Podcast on Instagram. And if you ever want to be a guest on the show or have any questions for our guests, email me at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening today, and thank you for kicking it with me. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at kickitwithkatiepodcast _ between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.